Hey, it's Terry Gorry, and this is the Irish Law and Small Business podcast. I don't do much criminal law on this channel, this YouTube channel, because I don't do criminal law generally in my practice, but I came across an interesting case there, a somewhat unusual case in the Irish Times this morning. It's to do with a law graduate who has been given a 4-year prison sentence for rape. And the somewhat unusual circumstances in the case involving a chap called Owen Considine, a Limerick law graduate, is that he had been engaging with the girl in question, the victim, in consensual sexual intercourse, but it became rough. And then at some point after it became rough, the intercourse continued after the woman had withdrawn consent, and she begged Considine to stop. He had pleaded not guilty to rape of the woman, but he was convicted at trial last January. The woman was a student. They were out drinking in a city centre pub with friends. She met the defendant, they left together, went to her home. They began to have consensual sex. She said he began pulling her hair and banging her head against the headboard of the bed. He grabbed a fistful of her hair and she asked him to stop, and he did, but then he did it again. The court heard that the sexual intercourse continued in a consensual way at this point. The woman testified that after a while the man became much rougher and he put his hand around my neck and started to choke me. She said that at one point she was unable to breathe and she was frightened and was shaking her head and to tell him to stop. She said he moved his hands onto her shoulders and was pinning her down. The court heard that it was at this point she withdrew her consent and the man continued sexual penetration without consent. She said, I started begging him to stop, but he didn't stop having sex with me. She said this lasted 90 seconds before she was able to move him off by getting her feet up and under him and pushing him away. Considine apologised to the woman and told her he thought that she liked it and he'd had a previous girlfriend that liked it. He told her also that he couldn't stop because she was so good looking. The woman was upset and asked Considine to leave. He initially refused and said he wanted to make sure that she was okay, but she told him she just wanted him to leave, and he did. On sentencing then, Mr. Justice Paul McDermott said that rape was a very serious offence, whatever form it takes. He said rape was a violation of the woman's or of the victim's bodily integrity and a grossly invasive act of violence. The judge noted that the circumstances of the case were somewhat unusual. However, consensual sexual engagement beforehand does not excuse a failure to stop. He set a headline sentence of 4.5 years, and he noted that Considine accepts the verdict of the jury, but he continues to deny rape. He said there was no guilty plea or expression of remorse, which would allow the court to reduce the headline sentence substantially. He said that Considine's regrets focused on the impact of this case on his family, but there has been little or no thought for the victim. He gave him a prison sentence of 4 years. He directed Considine to place himself under the supervision of the probation service for 18 months post-release. The victim impact report for the woman then, she was left with bruising on her arms and neck. She suffered bleeding from the scalp. She said she'd lost any sense of safety in her own bedroom and felt safer staying out all night than she did in her own bed. She said she experienced suicidal ideation and that during the trial she felt she had been the one on trial. She said to Considine directly, "You've offered me no explanation, admission or remorse. You took so much from me in just 90 seconds. That's a somewhat unusual case. It's a rape conviction. It's a law student. Consensual sex was in train, as it were. There was consensual sex, but the consent was withdrawn, and the sex continued then for 90 seconds, and therefore the sex was no longer consensual and it was essentially rape. and Constantine has been convicted of rape, law student, and he's been sentenced to 4 years. Hope you find this video informative, interesting, useful, or whatever. You might give it a thumbs up down below. Thanks a lot.